I came back from the funeral, wearing the same navy suit I wore when I buried my father. Except this time it hung off me, like it had swallowed all the years between then and now. The fabric still smelled faintly of cedar and church candles. You'd think grief would make your steps heavy, but mine were light, almost floating, as if my body had already decided to outrun the pain. I unlocked my front door and paused to listen to the silence. It was polite, almost courteous, the kind of silence that lets you hear your own heartbeat and decide if you still want to keep going. My wife, Lila, didn't meet me at the door. She used to. Years ago, when the kids were small and the mortgage was a rumor, she would wait in the doorway with a dish towel in one hand and a smile that said the world was survivable. Now, the world felt like a room with a window that wouldn't open. I hung my jacket, loosened my tie, and caught a glimpse of myself in the hallway mirror. Gray at the temples, lines around the mouth like parentheses holding in something unsaid. The eyes were the only part of me that looked young, and even they were tired of pretending. "Dad?" My son's voice floated from the kitchen. Malik. 32, sharp jaw, sharper tongue. A man who carried his ambition like a blade. He stepped into the hallway with his phone still in his hand. "You okay?" "I'm alive," I said, which, given today, feels like an accomplishment. He nodded, but his eyes were already somewhere else, running silent calculations on a spreadsheet I couldn't see. "We should talk soon." "We are talking." "No, I mean later, when everyone's here." Everyone meant my daughter, Aria, and her husband, Tyler. It meant Lila, sitting at the dining table, testing the weight of every word. It meant the house filling with footsteps that did not match the rhythm of my heart. I went to my study to put down the old leather briefcase my father had given me when I passed the journeyman exam. I was a construction foreman for 30 years. Cement dust lives under your nails like a secret. Even when you think you've washed it away, you only moved it from your hands to your memory. I set the briefcase on the desk and opened it. Inside was a thin file, the deed to the beach house, the bank statements, and, folded like a paper bird, a letter addressed to me in my father's handwriting. My hands shook as I unfolded it. His script was neat, like the man himself. "Son, if this letter has found you, I've already said my last words in a room that smelled too clean. You know what the sea meant to me. The house by the water is not a prize, it's a promise. Use it to heal, not to bargain. I trust your judgment. You earned it the hard way, the only way worth anything. Love, Dad." I read it twice, then a third time, until the words felt like stones in my mouth. The house by the sea. My father had built it after my mother died, plank by plank, as if grief could be measured in boards and nails. To everyone else it was a valuable piece of property. To me, it was an apology from the ocean for taking too many things and leaving too much emptiness. The front door opened and the air changed. Lila's heels clicked on the hardwood. Aria's laugh came in thin strands, too bright for a day like this. Tyler followed with the confident shuffle of a man who always believes a chair will be pulled out for him before he needs to sit. I heard Malik put his phone down on the kitchen counter like he was setting a fuse. "In here," I called. We gathered in the dining room, a place where birthdays used to happen, and now conversations went to die. The table had a new scratch down the center. Life leaves marks in straight lines when no one's watching. Lila poured water into glasses with the care of a woman who had learned to be careful with everything. She didn't look at me when she asked, "How was it?" "Quiet," I said, like he wanted. Aria touched my forearm. She had Lila's eyes and my stubbornness. "You did right by him, Dad." "I hope so." There was a beat, a subtle rearrangement of spines and moral compasses, and then Tyler cleared his throat. "We're really sorry for your loss," he said, the way people say it when they're about to ask for something. "And, about the house, we thought, well, we've been thinking." "Let's just be direct," Malik cut in. "Dad, we know Grandpa left you in charge of everything, and with the market being what it is, it might be smart to sell sooner rather than later." Arya's hand tightened on my arm. "Or we could rent it out, short term. High season is coming. We ran some numbers. It's promising." I looked at Lila. She kept her eyes on the water pitcher. The room felt suddenly too small for all this breathing. "You ran numbers," I said. Tyler slid a folder across the table like a magician revealing a card. "We put a proposal together. Revenue projections, maintenance, tax implications, all of it. We even spoke to a broker, discreetly." I didn't open the folder. I could already feel the cheap paper under my fingers. "You spoke to a broker about a house that isn't yours?" Arya's mouth thinned. "That's not fair. We're just trying to help." "Help who?" I asked. "Me or yourselves?" No one answered. Outside, a delivery truck exhaled at the curb. The clock on the wall ticked like a metronome for a song I didn't want to dance to. Malik leaned forward. "Look, Dad, you've been through a lot. Managing all this, it's a lot for one person. Let us shoulder it. We can maximize value, make sure nothing goes to waste." "Value," I said softly. "Waste." I thought of my father's hands, the way the veins stood up like highways under his skin. I thought of that house, the smell of salt and old wood, the way the porch steps creaked like they were telling you to be gentle. I thought of Lila, who once told me that money is loud but love is quiet, and how lately the house had felt like a place where we kept the noise. Tyler tapped the folder.
"If we move quickly, we can lock in a high-end rental for the summer. After that, we reassess or sell. Either way, we all benefit." "All?" I repeated. Arya swallowed. "We assumed a family trust, divided evenly. It's the responsible thing." Lila finally met my eyes. There was apology in hers, and something else I couldn't name. "Maybe we should slow down." "For once," I said. "I agree." I stood. My chair made a sound like a wounded animal. "I'm tired," I said. "It's been a long day. Leave the folder, I'll read it." Malik looked relieved, mistaking my weariness for surrender. "Of course." They drifted toward the living room, voices low, like conspirators who had successfully hidden the knife. I stayed in the dining room with the folder untouched, listening to their silhouettes move on the other side of the wall. I wasn't ready to know the exact shape of their plans. It's one thing to feel the betrayal soften the edges of your faith. It's another to measure it in bullets and inches. After a while, I slipped down the hallway to my study, closed the door, and locked it. I took out my father's letter again and laid it beside a yellow legal pad. I wrote a title at the top in block letters. "What They Forgot." Under it, I started a list. They forgot who built the porch steps they took prom photos on. 2. They forgot why the bathroom window sticks when it rains. 3. They forgot that grief wakes up early and goes to bed late. 4. They forgot I'm not the man they imagine when they talk in the other room. I stopped at number 4 and listened. Through the thin wall, I could hear Tyler laughing small, careful laughs, the kind you make when you're not sure if the joke is legal. I reached into the briefcase and pulled out a second envelope, one I had not shown them. This one had a single key inside. On the tag in my father's blocky print, "Workshop." The workshop sat behind the beach house, a squat building with a rusted lock and a mind of its own. Few people knew what was in it. My father and I did. Inside that workshop was the only thing louder than money. Proof. Not the kind you wave around at parties, the kind you keep until you need it more than you need the approval of your children. I closed my hand around the key. Let them plan. Let them talk about projections and percentages. I had a different kind of math in mind, the kind my father taught me with a nail and a length of string. Find your true line. Measure twice. Cut once. If you do it right, the pieces fit, even when everyone else swears they won't. And if you do it really right, nobody sees the cut until it's too late. Grief is a fog that makes every street look like a place you've already gotten lost. I drove to the coast anyway. I didn't tell anyone. The sky was the color of dishes left too long in the sink. The ocean kept clearing its throat like it was trying to speak and couldn't remember the first word. I parked behind the dune grass where the wind learns to whistle and walked the last stretch to the house. The porch steps complained the way old friends do, softly, with affection, still telling you the truth. Paint peeled from the railing like it was trying to shrug out of an old skin. I stood on the top step and let the door remember me. Wood remembers touch. It keeps a record on its own terms. The lock turned and the smell wrapped around me. Salt, dust, a memory of my mother's lemon oil, the ghost of Sundays. Behind the house, the workshop waited the way a dog waits for only one person. It was squat, stubborn, and unhandsome, a box that had decided not to care about faces. The rusted padlock was the same one we'd put on when you could still fix things with a handshake. I took the key from my pocket and slid it in. It turned with a tired click, a little sigh of surrender. Inside, the light switch resisted, then complied. Fluorescents hummed to life, the cheap kind that flicker like a bad thought. The room was orderly in the way of a man who'd built his own order. Jars filled with nails and screws labeled in my father's tight letters. A pegboard with the negative shapes of tools still hanging from the last time he used them. A coffee can full of carpenter's pencils worn down to knuckles. In the corner, under a canvas tarp, was the thing the key had really been for. The safe wasn't large, but my father had never believed in the idea that bigger meant safer. It was an old gray box with a wheel like a ship's too small rudder. The combination was muscle memory. He'd taught it to me on a Sunday afternoon when words were scarce, and that counted as love. Left, right, left. The dial spun, then stopped, and the door opened with the moist breath of old paper. On top was an envelope with my name. Under it, a bundle of documents bound with twine, a cassette recorder the color of a schoolteacher's purse, and a small velvet pouch that made a muffled clink when I moved it. I opened the envelope first. Son, this safe is for when you are outnumbered by voices that forgot where they learned to speak. Inside are the things I kept, not because I was afraid, but because I was patient. Don't rush. Use the right tool for the job. Dad. It's a strange feeling when a dead man gives you instructions. It's like hearing your own future write itself in someone else's hand. I set the letter aside and untied the twine. The documents were practical and pointed. The original deed? A transfer on death designation already recorded with the county that put the beach house entirely in my name the second his heart stopped. A second deed, prepared but not filed, conveying the property to something called Harbor Hands Foundation, an entity my father had registered quietly 3 years ago. Attached to that was a mission statement in his humble grammar. Provide scholarships and starter toolkits to apprentices in the trades. Pay the first month's rent for those who take jobs out of town. Remind them that good work is a kind of prayer. At the bottom of the stack was a ledger. My father had recorded every favor to family over 25 years. It read like a slow confession. Malik, car down payment, $7,500. Aria, college shortfall, $12,000. Tyler, bridge loan for business, $18,000. No interest paid. Next to each entry, dates, signatures, little notes. Said he'd pay when he got his bonus. Smiled. Promised to make me proud. My father had not asked for interest. He had kept receipts anyway. I opened the velvet pouch. Inside were 4 loose keys and a little digital voice recorder the size of a lighter. Fresh batteries inside. A strip of masking tape on the back with my father's all-caps handwriting, Porch, 614. Kitchen, 902. Aria, stairs, 1210. It hit me then. Hard enough to make me grip the workbench. People talk when they think the ocean is louder. My hands moved before my doubts could catch up. I popped in the first cassette from the schoolteacher recorder and pressed play. Ocean, gulls, the creak of the porch, chair scoots. Then Malik's voice, younger by a few summers but already sharpened. He'll never sell unless we push him. Aria. We don't push, we guide. We make it about managing his stress. Tyler, oily and confident. Or we just get a professional opinion. Doctor says he's not fit to handle complex property decisions. Court appoints a conservator. Boom, we're in. A clink of ice in glasses. Laughter that didn't know it was being recorded. My chest went cold and then hot, like something breaking and soldering itself back together in the same breath. I listened to another, kitchen clatter, Lila's voice, softer, full of careful edges. He's proud. If you humiliate him, you'll lose him. Malik. We already lost him the day he chose that house over Mom. Aria. Don't, Malik. Lila again, low. You're both wrong. He chose both of you. You just didn't notice because you were busy being children. A chair slides back, footsteps, tape ends. I rewound, sat on the stool by the bench, and let the workshop be a boat for a minute. The fluorescence hummed at a frequency only guilt can hear. My father hadn't wanted me to rage. He had wanted me to measure twice, use the right tool for the job. I laid out the tools on the workbench like a surgeon prepping for a quiet kind of operation. The ledger, the prepared deed to harbor hands, the tapes, a pen that doesn't smudge, and a narrow spiral notebook of my own where I wrote another title. What I will not do. Under it, I will not shout. 2. I will not beg for respect I've already earned. 3. I will not strike blindly. I will cut clean. 4. I will leave room for mercy. 5. I will not let them ruin what made us. Then, on a fresh page, how to build a silence they can hear. Step 1. Agree with them, a little. Give them rope that looks like ribbon. I left the workshop with the recorder in my pocket, and the harbor hand's deed locked away again. The ocean exhaled against the shore. The sky decided to keep its gray. On the drive back, I called Malik. Hey, he said, brisk, the way people are when they think good news is about to arrive. Did you look at the proposal? I did, I said, and left a pause for hope to age a decade. Let's test it. Test? Trial run, 2 weeks. We'll put the house on a short-term rental, 1 booking, high dollar. You and Aria handle the setup, repairs, coordination, all of it. Tyler, you do the broker side. Lila and I will oversee and sign where needed. On the other end of the line, you could hear his teeth touch. That's great, Dad. That's actually, wow. Yeah, we can move fast. We'll meet tomorrow morning at the house, 9 a.m. Bring your paperwork. Bring Tyler. Done.
Malik, I added, and softened my voice. Thank you. I appreciate you taking this on. He didn't know what to do with that. Of course. I hung up and stared at my phone like it was a small animal I had finally taught a trick. Step 2. Make them record themselves. Not with tapes. They'd recognize those. With signatures, with emails, with their own words when they're sprinting toward the thing they think is theirs. Back home, Lila was in the bedroom, folding laundry into neat stacks as if order could be manufactured by corners. She looked up when I came in. "You went to the coast." I did. "How was it?" "Honest," I said, and when she frowned I added, "The house still tells the truth even when we don't." She sat on the edge of the bed. "They're going to push you." "I'm going to let them," I said. She blinked. "Since when did you become a man who walks into the wave?" "Since I remembered I know how to swim." I told her about the trial run, careful to leave out the cassette recorder and the harbor hand's deed. Her mouth did a small scared thing and then smoothed. "You're going to let them turn your father's house into a weekend theme park?" "I'm going to let them show me who they are," I said, "on paper." She nodded slowly. "And if they show you exactly what you already know?" "Then," I said, "I'll file a piece of paper of my own." That night I wrote 3 emails. The first to a reputable property manager I trusted more than any broker in Tyler's contact list. Observational, non-committal, asking for a courtesy walk-through opinion. The second to my lawyer, a woman with the demeanor of a librarian and the appetite of a trial shark, attaching scans of the ledger and asking about offsets, acknowledgments of debt, and what it might look like to secure repayment through participation in a temporary family trust. The third to myself, a draft of a management consent form for the trial run, full of benign language and one sharp clause buried where only the attentive bleed. No party shall encumber, sell, assign, or pledge any interest in the property without the sole written consent of grantor, that would be me, and any attempt shall be void and evidence of disqualification from participation. I printed 3 copies and slept like a man who had finally put his hammer down. Morning came as if it had been practicing all night. Coffee tasted like resolve. I drove to the beach house early, skipped the porch this time, and went straight to the workshop. I tucked the tiny recorder in the corner under the shelf where the good paintbrushes lived, the place where voices bounced before you knew they'd been caught. Not because I needed more proof, because sometimes you put a mirror in a room to see who checks themselves. At 8:58 a.m., a black SUV pulled into the sand-rutted drive with the posture of a visiting king. Malik got out first in a crisp jacket that made him look like he billed by the hour. Aria followed in sneakers that said she'd planned to be practical today. Tyler brought sunglasses meant to announce his face to people who hadn't asked. They smiled like we were a family that agreed on what that word meant. "Welcome home," I said, and meant it exactly the wrong way. "Wow," Aria breathed, taking in the sea as if it were a feature we'd paid extra for. "This place is going to photograph beautifully." Malik shook my hand, clasping my shoulder in a pattern he'd probably learned in a podcast. "We'll take good care of it, Dad." Tyler checked his watch. "Broker can swing by at noon." "Broker can wait in the car," I said, breezy, genial. "First, we're going to walk. I want you to feel where the boards give and where they hold. We'll make a list. Then we'll talk paperwork." They nodded. People who think they're running a con nod a lot. It buys them time to decide whether you're worth the real smile. We stepped onto the porch. The boards sang the same old song. I watched their faces as the house made its introductions. The way Malik's eyes narrowed at the uneven plank he'd trip on if he stopped looking down long enough to admire the view. The way Aria reached instinctively for the rail with a loose screw.
The way Tyler inhaled and tried not to show that the smell of old salt made him feel like a guest in a room where the host may not like him. Inside, I handed out printed checklists. I gave Malik exterior and structural, Aria interior and guest experience, Tyler compliance and vendors. I assigned them not as punishment, but as prophecy. "Remember," I said gently, "this is a test. Show me your best." They split up, pens uncapped, ambition lighting their way. I watched from the doorway to the workshop, my hand on the key in my pocket like it was a small animal I was trying to keep calmly asleep. By noon, I'd have signatures. By evening, I'd have emails. By tomorrow, I'd have a decision clearer than the horizon after a storm. And if they failed the test, well, I had something stronger than a lesson. I had a deed waiting for the right day. By the time the sun leaned toward noon, I'd already collected more than signatures. I'd collected faces. You can learn a lot from how someone holds a pen when the paper in front of them means money. Malik signed with the speed of a man whose life has always rewarded confidence. Aria hesitated for a heartbeat before adding her neat teacher-perfect signature. Tyler, as expected, signed last and hardest, pressing so deep the ink bled through the page like guilt trying to escape. "Perfect," I said, sliding the papers into a folder. "Congratulations. You're now officially partners in this little experiment." Tyler grinned. "Temporary partners, you mean, till we prove the model works?" I smiled back. Exactly that. The property manager I'd contacted earlier arrived not long after. A woman named June, early 60s, sharp eyes, hands that had known tools. I liked her because she didn't dress like someone who needed to impress brokers. She wore the look of someone who already owned her piece. "Mr. Harris," she said, shaking my hand, "your father was a legend out here. Built half the boardwalk benches after the storm of '98. I nodded, watching Malik's jaw tighten. My father's name still meant something out here, something money couldn't buy. June did her inspection while my family followed like tourists on a museum tour of their own future. Every room she entered, she left with a small hum, a note of approval that made Tyler's smile falter more each time. Finally, she turned to me. "This house is in remarkable condition, sir. Whoever maintained it knew what they were doing." I nodded toward the ceiling. He did. "Good bones," she said, "and a good soul. That's rare." Malik stepped in, too smooth. "So, from a rental perspective, what are we looking at?" June eyed him briefly, then me. "Depends. You want to keep it a home or turn it into an asset?" That hung in the air like a moral test disguised as small talk. I let it hang. Then I said, "A home. Always a home." Her nod was slow and approving. "Then I'll treat it like one." As she left, Tyler muttered something about sentiment being bad for business. I pretended not to hear. By evening, we'd finished the tour, gathered our notes, and driven back to the city. Lila had cooked dinner, lamb stew and cornbread, the smell of comfort trying to disguise the unease that had moved into our house weeks ago. Malik arrived first, all casual warmth and fake modesty. "You look tired, Dad," he said. "Long day?" "Productive," I replied. Aria came next, carrying a small bouquet, the kind you pick up last minute when guilt stops at the grocery store. "Thought the table could use color," she said, kissing my cheek like we hadn't just argued over inheritance. Tyler followed, wine in hand, the kind with a price tag you keep visible. "For the chef," he said to Lila, who accepted it with the diplomacy of a queen greeting an unwanted emissary. We sat. The clinking of cutlery filled the first few minutes, a polite war of sound. "So,
Malik started. "The house is officially listed for the test run. We set the price high, premium experience, oceanfront exclusivity. The ad's already live. Tyler handled the listing. Aria wrote the description. We're good to go." Lila raised an eyebrow. "Already?" "Speed is key in real estate," Tyler said smoothly. "We had the photos ready from last summer's visit. I added some filters, made the light warmer. People eat that up." I looked at Aria. "Filters?" Her fork paused mid-air. "Just slight edits, nothing dishonest." "Of course," I said, tasting the words like metal. Malik leaned forward. "Actually, Dad, there's something else. We got an inquiry within an hour. A corporate retreat, 2 weeks, full rate. It's perfect." "Corporate?" Lila echoed. "As in business event?" Tyler jumped in. "Relax, Mrs. Harris. These are professionals. They'll treat the place with respect. We just need you and Mr. Harris to sign off so they can secure dates." I folded my napkin and set it down carefully, the way my father used to before saying something that changed a room. "Send me the details," I said. "It's time-sensitive," Malik pressed. "They need confirmation tonight." "Then I suppose they'll wait till morning," I said. He frowned. "Dad," I cut him off with a small smile. "I don't do midnight signatures. Bad habit for builders. You rush the foundation, the whole thing collapses." The silence that followed was tight, brittle. Lila covered it with talk about the weather. Tyler refilled his glass too quickly. Aria looked like she wanted to shrink into her chair. After dessert, Malik stayed behind under the pretext of helping clear the table. "Look," he said quietly, "I know you're cautious, but this deal could mean real money. Enough to finally ease things for you and Mom." "I'm not looking for ease," I said. "I'm looking for honesty." He blinked, defensive. "You think I'm not being honest? I think you're rushing to a payday that doesn't belong to you yet." His mouth tightened. "You always make me sound like the villain in your stories." "Maybe," I said softly, "but every story needs one." He dropped the dish towel and left without saying goodbye. Later that night, when the house had gone quiet, I sat by the kitchen window with my father's old tape recorder in front of me. I pressed record, but I didn't speak. I just let the sound of the clock fill the room. Somewhere in that slow ticking, I realized what my father had meant about patience being a weapon. At 11:37 p.m., my phone buzzed. A forwarded email from Malik's account. Subject, property deal. Signed agreement attached. Attached was a PDF. My name forged in neat digital ink. I didn't move for a full minute. Just watched the tiny icon spin as the file downloaded. Then I opened it. There it was, my signature, clean and perfect. The corporate rental already approved, deposit transferred, my children's names neatly listed as co-managers. I stared until my reflection in the laptop screen blurred into my father's face. The ledger had new lines waiting to be written. I whispered into the darkness. "All right. Lesson 1 failed." The next morning I called June. "They forged my name," I said simply. Her sigh was long and low. "Want me to cancel the booking?" "Not yet," I said. "Let it stand. Let them believe they've won." "Dangerous game." "Not if you built the board yourself," she chuckled softly. "Your father used to say that." "I know," I said. "He taught me the rules." That day I drove back to the coast alone. No calls, no warnings. The house looked innocent, its white siding glowing in the afternoon sun, pretending not to know the kind of betrayal being planned inside it. On the porch, I set down my bag and unlocked the door. The air smelled different, like expensive cologne and arrogance. In the living room, a printed event schedule lay on the table.
Horizon Tech Team Retreat, sponsored by Tyler and Malik Harris. In the corner, the hidden recorder blinked its small red light. Still running. I sat on the couch and whispered into the empty room, "Let's see what kind of sons I raised." The ocean outside didn't answer, but the waves sounded like they were keeping score. The ocean had turned gray again by the time they arrived. SUVs, sleek and black, rolling through the sand road like a convoy of ambition. Men in tailored polos, women in crisp blazers, laughing too loud for a place built on silence. Horizon Tech, a company that sells nothing but words and screens. They were here for team bonding. Ironic, considering my own family couldn't manage that even with blood in common. I parked 2 houses down and watched from the bluff where the wind still carried salt and judgment. Malik stood on the porch, shaking hands, radiating the kind of confidence that comes from other people's money. Aria smiled for photos she didn't want to be in. Tyler played the host, sunglasses, clipboard, the full performance of a man who believes control is the same thing as power. They didn't see me. That was good. The house did. Inside, cameras disguised as smoke detectors blinked to life, installed quietly by June's maintenance man 2 days before while I pretended to authorize repairs. One feed went straight to my phone, another to the cloud. My father would have laughed. He always said the best tool is the one they don't notice until it's too late. By noon, the retreat had begun. Laughter, music, the clinking of glasses, the smell of grilled seafood, a celebration of profit and pretense. I watched through my screen as my children toasted strangers in my father's living room. "To new beginnings," Tyler shouted, raising a glass. "To family," Aria added, her voice slightly brittle. "To the man who made this possible," Malik said, and I froze, waiting for him to say my name. But he didn't. He said, "To my grandfather, who taught me that success belongs to those who dare to take it." Applause, laughter, someone whistled. The camera caught Malik's proud smile, the kind that doesn't realize it's eating itself alive. I felt the old anger rise, not the hot kind that burns quick, but the slow, heavy kind that builds like concrete setting in your veins. But anger without precision is just noise. My father didn't raise me for noise. So I started my own kind of retreat. The next morning before sunrise, I drove back with a tool bag and a thermos of coffee. The beach was quiet, the guests still asleep, the tide whispering secrets to the sand. I unlocked the workshop and opened the safe again. Inside, next to the deeds, was a thin envelope labeled insurance, personal. Inside that, 3 printed checks my father had never cashed, each from Tyler's company, each marked loan repayment consulting fee, each dated years apart. The amounts weren't huge, but the handwriting was all the same. My father had kept them, uncashed, maybe as proof of generosity. I'd use them as proof of deceit. In the same drawer, I found something else, an old camcorder, the kind that still used tapes. A relic, but it worked. I charged it, inserted a blank cassette, and pressed record. My reflection in the workshop window looked older, harder, more certain. "Dad," I said softly to the empty air, "you built this house with your hands. I'm going to rebuild its name with mine, and I won't raise my voice while I do it." I left the recorder running on the bench, a confession for no one yet, but maybe for later. Then I went to work. By the time the guests woke, I was already walking the perimeter of the property, wearing a contractor's vest, clipboard in hand. The security guy at the gate nodded politely, assuming I was staff. Tyler spotted me from the porch. Sir, he called. Can I help you? Maintenance, I said calmly. Sent by June from Coastal Management. Got an alert about a faulty septic sensor. He hesitated, then smiled. All fake politeness. Oh, yeah, we noticed a smell last night. Do your thing. Will do. I moved around the house, checked the access points, took photos. But the smell wasn't what I was here for. What I wanted was hidden under the deck, a small cable junction box feeding the cameras and Wi-Fi. I installed an extra line, not to watch them, to record their network traffic, every email, every file, every message they sent from inside the property. They wanted business, I'd give them business. Before I left, I placed one more recorder under the kitchen counter, right next to the wine fridge, the same place my father had hidden his first microphone years ago. History repeats itself, but smarter. That evening I watched the feeds again. The retreat had shifted tones, less laughter, more whispers. Tyler and Malik arguing quietly on the porch. Told you we wouldn't just sign it, Malik hissed. He already did, digitally, Tyler snapped. The client wired the deposit. You think that happens without approval? Maybe he finds out, Malik said, pacing. If he checks the records, then we show him the transaction. It's clean. Nobody cares how it got there. Aria's voice cut in, small and tired. He'll care. You don't know Dad like you think you do. Malik scoffed. You're still scared of him? No, she said. I'm scared of what he does when he stops being quiet. I smiled. At least one of them remembered. The next day, the guests hosted a leadership session. Aria stood awkwardly near the back while Malik gave a speech about heritage and ambition. He told the story of how his family home had been repurposed into a new chapter for the next generation. The audience clapped. Tyler filmed on his phone, already planning the company reel. That clip, I later learned, went straight to social media. And that was exactly what I needed, because attached to the post in small text was the house address, Ocean View Estate, built by Malik Harris's family. Public, traceable, legally problematic. Within hours, June texted me, "Want to see something interesting?" She attached a screenshot of Horizon Tech's official website. Under Corporate Retreat Venues, they had added My Father's House, Exclusive Partnership, Harris Properties, LLC. A company I'd never heard of, but the State Business Registry had, filed 3 weeks earlier by Malik and Tyler, using my last name, using my father's legacy. I sat in my truck, staring at the screen, feeling something deep in my chest click into place. Not anger, not even betrayal. Clarity. The kind my father used to describe before making a cut. I called my lawyer. "Ready?" I asked. Her voice was cool and amused. "Been ready since you told me about the ledger." "I'm sending you a file," I said, "and I'll need one thing from you." "What's that?" "A court order for a freeze, accounts, assets, and business operations, under suspicion of forged authorization." She whistled. "You're going nuclear." "No," I said softly. "I'm just putting the roof back on the house they tore apart." The retreat ended 2 days later. The guests left smiling, the kind of smile people wear when they've drunk too much success. Malik locked the door, already making plans for the next one. I arrived 10 minutes after their car pulled away. The house was silent again. The air was thick with perfume and lies. On the kitchen table sat a folder marked Phase 2. Inside, plans to refinance the property under the name Harris Holdings. Tyler's signature, Malik's, and one
forged copy of mine again. Only this time, I'd already placed invisible watermark traps in my scanned documents. My digital signature glowed with a code, a pattern only I could identify. Every copy they made, every forgery, carried it. Enough to prove intent, enough to prove fraud. I photographed everything, locked the folder back, and whispered, "Thank you for the evidence." Then, before leaving, I took my father's old hammer from the workbench. Not to destroy, just to feel its weight. The handle was smooth from years of honest labor. I set it down gently on the table. A reminder, power doesn't come from anger. It comes from precision. Outside, the sky was heavy with rain. I stood on the porch and let the first drops hit my face. Somewhere inside, the recorder under the counter was still blinking, still catching the echoes of their greed. And in the next 48 hours, it would catch something else. Because the storm coming wasn't from the sky. It was me. The storm hit overnight, the kind that starts as a whisper and ends as a lesson. Rain lashed against the windows, the ocean roared like it had been waiting for someone to lose control, and in the middle of it all, I sat at the old wooden table, laptop open, phone beside me, the hammer still resting by my hand like a silent witness. By morning, every file I'd gathered was already in motion, forwarded to my lawyer, June, and one journalist friend from my union days who still believed in stories about right and wrong. The headline he would write later wasn't about scandal. It was about inheritance, not the kind you count in dollars, but the kind you measure in what's left of your name. At 9 a.m., Malik called. His voice was tight. "Dad, what the hell did you do?" I let the question hang there. He filled the silence. "Our accounts are frozen. The partnership site's gone. The lawyer says there's a fraud investigation." "Good morning to you too," I said. "You might want to stop using my signature for business. It tends to cause problems." "You set us up!" "No," I said quietly. "You set yourselves up. I just gave you the space to do it." He said something sharp, words that cracked like glass, and then the line went dead. I looked at the rain streaking the window and thought of my father's rule, never shout when you can show. That afternoon, they all came to the beach house. Malik, furious and trembling with entitlement. Arya, pale and silent. Tyler, pretending calm but sweating through his shirt. Lila stood by the door, her arms folded, her eyes cold with something between sadness and pride. "You wanted a meeting," I said. "We'll call this one family only." Malik slammed a folder onto the table. "You destroyed everything. You called the bank, the lawyer, the county. They think we committed fraud." "They don't think," I said. "They know. You tricked us." "No," I said again. "I trusted you." "That's not the same thing." Tyler tried to take control. "This doesn't have to get ugly. We can negotiate." I smiled faintly. "You already tried negotiation, with my forged signature." He looked to Lila for help. She didn't move. Arya finally spoke, her voice trembling. "Dad, we didn't mean for it to go this far." I turned to her. "You meant for it to go just far enough to cut me out, but not far enough to make you feel guilty. The problem is, you forgot how guilt works. It doesn't stop when you say sorry." Malik stepped forward, his voice breaking. "We were just trying to build something." "You were," I said softly. "A house of cards. And I gave you the wind." He stared at me, confused. "You think this makes you the hero?" "No," I said. "It makes me your father." The rain grew louder. I took the folder from my bag and opened it. Inside were printouts, the forged contracts, screenshots of their business site, bank transfers, all neatly documented. And at the top,
stapled together, a letter from my lawyer confirming the transfer of the property deed. Aria's eyes widened as she read the first line. Harbor Hands Foundation? That's right, I said. The house is no longer ours. It belongs to my father's foundation. It'll fund apprenticeships for young tradesmen, kids who still believe in earning something instead of taking it. Malik looked like he'd been punched. You gave it away? No, I said. I returned it to its purpose. That's insane, Tyler spat. Do you realize how much you've lost? More than you'll ever understand, I said, and meant it. Aria started crying then, quietly, the way children cry when they finally see their parents as people. Lila stepped beside me, resting a hand on my arm. It's done, she said softly. Let them learn. Malik's voice cracked again. You ruined us! I looked at him, and for the first time I didn't see my son. I saw my reflection, a younger version of myself that forgot humility until life taught it the hard way. No, I said. I saved what was left of us. You'll understand when you build something on your own. He shook his head, muttered something I couldn't catch, and stormed out into the rain. Tyler followed, cursing under his breath. Aria stayed. Dad, she whispered, I didn't mean to. I know, I said. But meaning doesn't fix what's broken. Only doing does. She wiped her eyes and nodded. Then let me help. With the foundation. I want to make it right. I hesitated, then nodded slowly. Start by showing up at sunrise tomorrow. We're rebuilding the porch. She managed a small, real smile, the first I'd seen from her in years. When she left, the house fell quiet again. Lila poured 2 cups of coffee and handed me one. You're shaking, she said. I'm fine, I lied. You did the right thing. I did the hard thing, I said. Right's never guaranteed. We stood by the window watching the rain ease into mist. The house looked peaceful again, like it had finally exhaled after years of holding its breath. My phone buzzed once more. A message from June. Transfer complete. Harbor Hands officially owns Ocean View. Proud of you, old man. I typed back, thank you. He'd be proud too. Then I stepped onto the porch where the boards creaked under my feet. Softer now, forgiving. The storm had passed, but the smell of salt lingered, sharp and clean. I sat on the top step, listening to the waves and the distant hum of a world still chasing the wrong kind of wealth. Somewhere inside, the hammer lay on the table, its handle warm from the firelight. I thought of my father, the way he'd smile without words, the way he'd measure a beam twice before cutting, the way he'd tell me, build slow, so it lasts longer than you do. And for the first time in years, I finally felt like I had.